Hello there. Today we are talking about conformity and alienation. So we're going to look at both of those situations and some examples of what that might look like. Both of these concepts are built into society. They influence change either by encouraging change or inhibiting change. So the two of those things have a great deal of impact on how things move along. Conformity, first of all, is the pressure of going along with what other people believe or decide to do. So conforming. And by this, it is affected by, or affects everybody. No one can really escape conformity. So what causes people to conform? Definitely group size has an impact. If the size of the group is, between 3 and 5 people, this is usually the maximum impact. You add more people and it doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. The magic number seems to be anything above that. And if you go less than 3, conformity is substantially reduced. So the smaller groups, not as much conformity. When you look at dissent, which means going away from what everyone else is doing, as soon as there's anybody in the group who disagrees, or even just kind of hems and haws about whether they want to do what is being proposed, conformity is reduced. And some studies found that it can be reduced from as high as 97% down to only 36% when there's somebody excuse me, within the group sorry, I have a tickle who is seen as competent and knowledgeable and respected. If they dissent or if they disagree, then conformity can go down to 36%. The dissenters must be consistent, otherwise they don't convince the majority. So if they, if you're within a group of friends and someone consistently decides that they don't want to be involved, then that has more power than someone who is here or there about going along or not. Mood is also important, and it definitely impacts conformity in different ways. So there's some evidence that shows we're more likely to conform when we're in a good mood than we are when we are in a bad mood. And one technique that has been used to increase conformity is using fear, then relief. So making someone afraid, and then relieving that fear by providing them with an option that creates or causes them to conform is an option for getting people to do what you want. So need for structure is also something that impacts conformity. While personality might not be as important, but if you have people who like things to be a certain way and have an understanding of how it's going to work, that can also impact if they will go along with what you want them to do. Social approval is a huge one. They want to feel like they belong and that people like them. So some people, have a greater need for having their self-confidence boost. So they're more likely to conform. And very often you'll find that non-conformists are less likely to care about what other people think about them. So if non-conformity and self-confidence kind of complement each other because they already feel confident, so it doesn't matter. They don't care if they go along or not. Whereas the opposite also holds true. If someone has low self-confidence, they might tend to go along with things just to feel good and be a part of them. The chameleon effect is unintentional mirroring. So what that means is that people who are getting along so well, they tend to look like each other and act like each other. Hand gestures, the way they speak, and even how they stand. So that is called the chameleon effect. Culture plays a role as well. Collectivist cultures, so East Asian, conform more because if you do not conform, then you're seen as deviant within their society, and there's much bigger consequences for that. Western cultures have more individualist attitudes, so people are more likely to feel okay about not conforming. And on average, conformity rates in collectivist cultures of between 25 and 58%, whereas average conformity in individualist cultures, such as the Western culture, is between 14 and 39%, so much lower. Authority also plays a role. Conformity can be transformed into obedience, so listening to what someone has told you who is in authority. So when you look at different studies, and we'll see here in a second, Milgram has a study of obedience where he tells people to give varying degrees of shocks if the person. Let me restate. So Milgram does an experiment where he has a teacher and a student, and they're in different rooms, and the teacher has a series of shocks in front of him, and the student is being asked to answer different questions. If the student gets it wrong, the teacher is supposed to shock them. And as they get more and more answers wrong, the shock goes up in intensity. Now, part of the experiment is that the student is in on the experiment and is not actually getting the shocks, but the teacher who's giving the shocks thinks he is. And there's a video clip in the lesson that you can take a look at, but it is amazing to watch this experiment and watch, when someone in authority is telling you to continue, that you actually do, even if you don't believe you should be. So you'll see, and it does, just mentioned here, is that is the psychology of scams. A lot of scam artists use that psychology to get what they want. So there's Milgram's experiment. Again, I'll provide that in the lesson. And the other experiment that was done was the Ash experiment. That does something similar. And there's also a prison one as well. So most of us are affected by social norms, and that will also impact whether we want to conform or not. Thinking about how others would react, how others would just be influenced, those types of things are very impactful on our own behavior. Reciprocation is a big one. So that means that we tend to believe if I give something, then you feel compelled to give something back. So tit for tat is a phrase that you often hear. If you're invited to somebody's wedding, then we feel like we should then invite them to our own, even if we don't want to. So is it good or bad? What do we think? Not really good or bad. It can be useful or it can be detrimental. If we just consider everything and we make our own decisions, then it's important to remember to be creative and that nonconformity has a place as well as conformity. We have a couple of different types of influence. One is informational. So this is the willingness to accept without skepticism information that another well-respected person tells us. The normative influence is the pressure to conform to the positive expectations of others, such as following in the footsteps of a parent, etc. So it's just kind of the norm, it's what's expected. So in general, conformity discourages social change, and it's very hard, as we've discussed in other lessons, to change behavior. Our desire to fit in is linked to a survival mechanism, so it's come from a long, long line of humans. In order to survive, we need to conform and do what other people are doing. A few examples of conformity with things that we know are wrong, but we still do it. Racial riots, apartheid, the gay and lesbian issues for years in society, and refusal to conform. Great example is Nelson Mandela, who ended up in prison for 26 years because of his refusal to conform. So we'll switch gears now a little bit and just look briefly at alienation. So the causes of alienation are when social change, such as increased urbanization and industrial development or technological development. So when these things take hold. Reasons today might be discrimination. So if someone just doesn't fit in, we alienate them. Temporary unemployment, and maybe we're dissatisfied with society in general. And as a result, we see gangs, we see cults. Anarchy is another one which we'll discuss. And some of them use this alienation to affect positive change in society. So they really push for change based on what they've faced. And again, Nelson Mandela tends to be a good example of that. So what is anarchism? This is a theory, a political theory that aims to create a society within which individuals can freely cooperate together as equals. It opposes any kind of government and wants a decentralized society. So it doesn't want anyone controlling anyone else. They prefer that to come up with individual solutions and have alternate institutions as well, so not government run. They also believe in evolution and pacifism, so non-violent forms of protest that bring about change is generally how they try and promote social action. So different types. One is communal, and these communal solutions. So they want to have a communal vision of society, see it as all one. And the idea is that it protects and encourages individual freedoms, but it supports everybody. So they have both evolution and revolution, and the idea of violence is only in self-defense against aggression. That's the concepts of conformity and alienation. So make sure you watch those couple of video clips. They are pretty telling, and even they're very old experiments. It is amazing what people will do to conform or when they're being told. Bye.